Hi, welcome to week 2 of Hindsight is 2020. I am going to talk to you this week about the emotional component of wellness. So you've seen this little diagram before, and last week I chose emotional this week. I think it's a really good time of the year. We're kind of gearing up here in January. We're kind of coming from the downfall of the holidays, and it's cold outside if you're here in St. Louis, and seasonal depression can kind of get to some of us. The emotional components of wellness are very prevalent in my work right now. So I thought I would take a second and talk to you about that today. When I say emotional wellness, what comes to mind for you? I think maybe kind of taking a second, thinking about it so we can move forward, kind of go in with your own ideas about it, and then I'll tell you kind of my thoughts on it, and you can form your own opinion based on that. So for me, emotional wellness means being connected internally. So being aware of my body, being aware of physiological responses, being aware of what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. Now, to some of us, that might come really naturally. Maybe we've done extensive work in mindfulness and body scanning. Maybe we really know how to be in tune with ourselves. But for a lot of us, especially in today's society with technology, you know, right here by us, it's really hard. It's really hard to stay aware. Also, we tend to be on autopilot most days. And when you're on autopilot, you're really not in the moment, is what I call consciously aware of where you are, of what you're doing. A way to do that is looking maybe at these three examples that I have here. So, paying more attention to the physiological responses that you have. So, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about body scans, mindfulness, and acknowledging those physical symptoms. Mindfulness is one of those concepts that's thrown around all of the time. I would like to be more mindful of eating. I'd like to be more mindful and more present when I am with my children or my significant other. This is a concept we hear all the time. What does it really mean? One of the examples I showed you on the little slide before was about body scanning. This is where you actually sit in a chair, you put your feet on the ground so you feel very grounded, and you can scan your body. You feel everything there is to feel from your feet to your head. Many times they would use this technique in a yoga or a meditation class. You can certainly look things up on YouTube and you can do like a guided type of mindfulness body scan. There are so many ways to be mindful and in the moment. As I mentioned, when you're with your kids or with your significant other, make sure there's no other distractions. Really be present in that moment. You can journal. You can be consciously aware of what you're doing at any point in time. It doesn't cost you money, and it doesn't cost you time. It's something that you can do in the moment, but you do have to acquire the skill. And the skill that I'm referring to is being consciously aware. So bringing your focus to what you're doing, where your feet are currently planted. And then the part that I have about physiological awareness, feeling those physical symptoms. So, for example, if you're someone like me who deals with anxiety, sometimes you'll have, or all of the time when you have anxiety, you will deal with the physiological symptoms. So maybe your palms get sweaty, maybe your heart starts to palpitate, maybe you start get like the butterflies in your stomach or the tension. We know the symptoms, right? So maybe you're feeling those things as a leading up to the anxiety. Maybe you're feeling them when you're actually in that state of anxiety. But it's really important for you to recognize when those feelings start so you can begin to put a stop pattern so you can deal with the emotional part of the anxiety. Not to spend all my time talking about anxiety. This is something that is very common. I deal with anxiety myself, so I've had a, kind of a personal pursuit. I have dealt with anxiety very well. I've dealt with anxiety very poorly. Hindsight being 2020, I know what I can do now. I know my triggers of anxiety. I know that when I start feeling a little bit shortness of breath, when I start getting very irritable with my family and my patience feels like it's just running out, I know that those are my symptoms of anxiety. So, what do I do when I start to notice those triggers or I notice those patterns? I want to put that stop pattern in place. But how do I do that? That's what I'm going to talk to you about next. Here's what I want to say about it. Okay, listen. So, when we are in that moment, when we have that feeling of that state of emotional anxiousness, we think that that's the time to cope. We think that that's the time that we have to have all the answers. How do I get past this anxiety? What are my coping skills? When in fact, you got the fight or flight going on, and we have no idea what the hell to do. So those physiological symptoms help us. We start getting, sick to our stomachs, and we might have to go to the bathroom, or we might have that tension, and we might not be able to like really be confident and kind of lift ourselves up because the physiological is kind of holding us back. That's our coping, okay? That's our body getting through that anxious moment. But what I want to say about this is what I was saying earlier about when our body is not in that state of arousal, that is the time to cue the coping, okay? So what you're going to do in those moments is be aware of what this feeling is like. Also, when you do that, you are adding coping skills to your toolbox without even knowing it. The toolbox is something that I lovingly refer to with all of my clients. It's something that I guess I kind of coined my own term of the toolbox, and that is what I metaphorically picture as a box, something that I have learned all of these skills. I have read these books. I've worked with clients, whatever, and I put them in my toolbox. And when I need them emotionally, when it's time for me to pull them out, I have them because I have acquired all of these coping skills, which are my tools in my toolbox. So hopefully these are some that you can add to your toolbox. Self-care. We know about self-care, but what do we know about it? Some people think that this is going to get their nails done every 2 weeks. It can be. Some people think that this is going to retreat every year. It can be. Guess what? It can also be something in between. Cool thing is, self-care can mean something completely different to you than it means to me or to my friends or to your friends. It can be whatever you need it to be. All right. So I put on here self-exploration. Self-exploration can be fun. You can go through all of these different things to figure out what it is that adds to your toolbox. So, is it really going to get your nails done on a regular basis? Is that your way of taking some time for you? Emotionally, do you get away from your husband and your kids? Emotionally, is it time after work that you can decompress? What does that do for you? Think about it. Now, if it's just something that adds to your stress because you got to get there on time, because you want to make sure that your nails always look good, is it a stressor for you? Think about it in terms of that cost benefit kind of thing. I want you to also think, what weighs you down? What drains you? What is it in your life that you're doing that just really is not adding the self-care benefit? Okay? Can you eliminate that? I know that sounds so simple and easier said than done, but it is a practice that I want you to think about. I want you to go through your day and think about the things that drain you, because practicing self-care is eliminating the things that drain you. If you have skipped through some of this video, I don't blame you. I totally get it. I know that my video editing isn't great, but I do know that my content is. Maybe my delivery is not quite what you need yet, but hear me when I say this last piece. If you skip everything and you come up to this part, I want you to layer the volume and I want you to hear what I have to say. Work backwards. Everything that we are working for is for a result, not a goal. We have a result. And what I'm talking about here is a balance in our lives. I don't believe that a balance is a goal. I believe that feeling harmony and peace and balanced in our lives is an end result. That's what we want to work toward. So let's get super deep here and say that is what life is about. It is about finding out what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what brings us joy and happiness, what drains us. That is life. That is the journey. And you know what? You are the expert on you. You know what works, you know what doesn't work, but you have to be mindful and consciously aware. Take the time to think about it. Using the hindsight 2020 idea, go back, think about it. Look at your planner from the year before. What did you do that you loved? What do you hope is on your calendar for 2020? On the flip side, what do you hope you never have to do again? Be intentional, plan it out so that you can have harmony and in your emotional well-being. Thank you so much for listening to this. Please shout out with any questions if you have them.